Yeah, that's better. That's good. All right. That's good.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Peeps. Hi, all you peeps out there. And we are VAXXED Land. This is Tia Severino. I am the Peeps TV host for Atlanta, the VAXXED ambassador for Atlanta. And I'm coming to you today with a very special story. Um, this was something that was just brought to my attention recently, and the story is so unbelievable. Well, I mean, it's believable knowing what we know, but I mean, it's just an unbelievable story. So anyway, my guest is Anita. Is it Vasquez?
Yes, correct. Anita
Vasquez.
Vasquez.
Is that right? Good. Okay, so Anita, let's start off by just introducing yourself. Tell us what your name, tell us your name and a little bit about who you are.
Okay, my name's Anita, and I am a mother first and foremost, and I'm also a registered nurse. I have two boys and one beautiful little girl, ages 14, 9, and my baby is 17 months. And
Wow.
we have a very upsetting and sad story that no parent should ever endure or even have to think about in their life, because it's a nightmare.
So before we go into that, you mentioned
Hmm.
your children and your children's ages. Let's go back to before you got pregnant with your children. What was your thoughts about vaccines? Like before you got pregnant with your first child, go back in time till before you had your very first baby. Tell me and tell us what your thoughts about vaccines were. What did you think about vaccines?
When I got pregnant with my first child, I was 20 years old, and I had him at 21, and I just did what the doctors told me to do and what the hospital did, and it was a scheduled vaccine that was recommended, and we followed through with what the doctor's orders were, which were to vaccinate my son.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with
So
no
you really,
questions asked, that's
yeah,
what
you're
I
young,
did.
young mom, and why would you question the doctors? The doctors know what they're doing, right?
Yes, unfortunately, unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
that was my way of thinking back then. Of course, it
Mm-hmm.
has changed tremendously today.
Mm-hmm. So your first two children were boys, and you have a
Yes.
little girl. And so with the first two boys, you vaccinated them on schedule. At what point did you go into medical school to become a nurse? At what point?
I went to nursing school. I think I got accepted in 2008, and I graduated in 2011, and then took the Texas or the state exam. Yes, the NCLEX test in 2012, and that's when I was licensed to be a registered nurse.
Okay. And so through your education as a nurse, did you learn more about vaccines that helped you feel more confident about your decision to vaccinate, or were you still just kind of going along with the flow?
It was pretty much, nursing school was just vaccines are safe and effective. You uh, you give it according to the schedule and memorize the schedule. Side effects were taught: mild skin irritation, mild low grade fever, maybe some slight swelling at the injection site,
Right.
and that's it. No talk about, no educating the future nurses about the inserts, about the long list of adverse reactions in those inserts, no education about adverse reactions or chemical reactions on different children, which all have a very specific and unique DNA, which genetic chromosomes, their immune system. No one person is made the same. No education regarding the vaccine injury compensation program. No education regarding the vaccine injury court. No education regarding the vaccine adverse events reactions. What is it? The reporting system. The VAERS. Just none of that. Where was that education? It wasn't there.
So in your education to become a nurse, you really didn't hear anything that would have made you give pause to the whole, like, you know, what you're doing with your own children.
Never.
Okay, so now baby number 3 arrives, beautiful little baby girl, and she's, you know, just doing fantastic to start off with. And then tell me what happened when she was 4 months old.
She was 4 months old, and the doctor did not look at the labels. And I was there for her 4-month well-child checkup. She was scheduled to get her 4-month vaccines, and I had my son there at the time. He was 13. He was scheduled for his second dose of the Gardasil vaccine. And everything was in one envelope, and she put the baby down and on the medical exam table and asked me if I could hold my daughter. And so while I was trying to hold her so she could get her vaccines, the doctor assumed that everything in the envelope was for my daughter. And while she was giving the oral rotavirus drink, I asked her, "Doctor, what are you giving the baby?" And she looked at my son and told him, "Don't kiss baby sister on the mouth because you'll get diarrhea." And he's 13 and saying, "What?" And so she repeated it, and then she totally ignored my question, very fast and quickly, routinely grabbed all the syringes and darted them one by one, and everything was in the baby.
Oh my gosh.
Before she stepped into the room, she was on her cell phone.
So she was distracted.
A personal phone call. After she ended that first personal phone call, when she initially went into the room, it was her husband. So then her mother called. She answered her mother, and then they spoke for a few seconds or minutes, and then that phone call ended. That's when she grabbed the white envelope. She gave my daughter the oral rotavirus vaccine, told that to my teenager about don't kiss her on the lips because you'll get diarrhea. And then it was very quickly routine, like one shot after the next. And after everything was said and done, I asked her, she said it was time to go home. And that's when I asked her about my son's Gardasil vaccine because he was due for the second dose that day. And she had no clue. She had no idea that he was even due for the medication that she ordered. And I said, "Yes, he's due today." I put it on the calendar, and she kept saying no and denying it. And I said, "Yes, he's due." So when she looked in her computer, she said, "You're right. He is due today. Let me get nurse so-and-so to go get that for you." When she went to that nurse, the nurse told her, "Hey, doc, that medication was in the envelope." And that's when the doctor realized that she had injected it into my daughter at 4 months old.
Have your whoever's holding the camera tilt it up a little bit because the top of your head's getting cut off, and we want to see your pretty face.
Oh.
A little bit right about there is much better. Okay. So just for review, okay. So you have a vaccine that was supposed to be administered to your son, Gardasil 9. And I'm sure that since you've had this experience, you've probably done a lot of research into that particular vaccine, and maybe you were even questioning whether or not it was an appropriate vaccine for your son to receive in the first place, considering that it doesn't really protect from cervical cancer. I don't know why they're giving it to boys, except that they don't want to miss out on the other half of the market for that vaccine. But
exactly.
You have a vaccine that was meant to be administered to a 13-year-old boy, and it's not Gardasil, the original formula. It was Gardasil 9, which has 9 antigens in it. And in addition to the 9 antigens that are in the Gardasil 9, your daughter also received what other vaccines? DTaP?
I think the DTaP was that's why the doctor thought that she thought that the DTaP was the Gardasil. They were short on DTaP. I believe she's received the Hib, the pneumococcal, the tetanus, the rotavirus. I don't have.
Well, tetanus doesn't come as an individual.
I don't have her. But she received 7 other.
Okay. So I remembered you telling me that they didn't have
polio.
Hib. They didn't have Hib. So you had the Pediarix, which is a 5-in-1. It's the DTaP plus polio and something else. And then also in addition to that, there was the rotavirus and the polio, right? The polio is part of the Pediarix. So that's 5 antigens plus the rotavirus, plus the 9 in the Gardasil, plus if you did the Prevnar 13, that's 13 antigens. So that's 13 plus 9 is 22, plus 5 is 27, plus the rotavirus is 28. It's 28 antigens at once in a 4-month-old baby, and one of those vaccines being designed for older children carrying a massive payload of aluminum. Mm-hmm. Just massive. So,
and of course, the CDC claims that every other baby that was mistakenly given the HPV at Anaya's age, they didn't have any sign or symptom that Anaya has. So therefore, there's no way in the world that the HPV could have caused any type of bad reaction to my daughter.
So how many other children have been accidentally administered the Gardasil?
Of course, they didn't give a number. They just said the babies or the infants that have been mistakenly injected with the HPV vaccine, not one of them has had an adverse reaction like my child had. So those patients are allergic to peanuts or penicillin, then my baby must be allergic to peanuts.
Yes, right, AC, you are correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. It's the logic of the pharmaceutical industry and the CDC that if we just deny it and pretend it doesn't happen, then it'll go away and we won't have to worry about it. So, and we know that. So, okay. So I'm hoping that did you continue to vaccinate your son with the Gardasil? The accidental?
Nobody in my family is getting vaccinated ever again.
But I mean, when they said, "Oh, that vaccine was supposed to go to your son, went to your daughter," did they try to inject your son that day, or did you say, "I'm out of here"?
They didn't tell me until after they injected it into my son. Then they tell me, yeah.
So wait a minute. So they went and got the shot for your son, came in, injected him, and then realized that they had given?
No, they were already on the phone with Poison Control.
Right.
And the maker of Merck.
But they still went ahead and injected your son.
Yes, without my knowledge about the medication error, they went ahead and injected my son anyway.
Wow.
Anyway.
And did he get the 3rd dose?
Well,
that was the 2nd dose.
He had gotten the 2nd dose. You know, after that, no one has ever. We're not doing any more vaccines. Ever
that was it. That was your wake up call when that happened. So you went home and started researching.
I would never do that again in my life. To anybody. I refuse, not just to my kids, but as a nurse, I have the obligation to educate and inform others, and I refuse to do that to anybody.
If you know the truth,
if that's their decision, then they better get another nurse to inject them, because I'm not the one to do it. I won't play Russian roulette with my children or anybody else's life.
Well, that's good. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Okay, so I'm still kind of playing around with the software here. All right, so the baby gets a total of 28 antigens, including Gardasil 9. And you take the baby home. They tell you to give her Tylenol, correct?
Yes.
Worst thing you can do, right?
The emergency room told me to give her Tylenol and told me they were looking at the fear of what did he say? The fear of the unknown. But didn't admit
the fear of the what? What? The fear of the unknown, meaning that you were sitting there going, oh my God, my baby just got this vaccine she wasn't supposed to get. Oh my God. And you're like mentally stressing yourself out.
Yeah.
He was trying to.
We're looking at the fear of the unknown, but yet never admits her for an observation. Just sends us home for me to monitor and assess, which of course I'm going to. I'm her mother. But how come they didn't admit her after a very toxic and unknown chemical reaction for a documented highly toxic drug overdose in a newborn baby? This is not meant for newborn babies. Why wasn't she admitted into the hospital to have facts written down, her vital signs, her intake and output? Why weren't these things recorded?
So tell me what happened that evening.
That evening, her home. She seemed fine. The doctor called, and the doctor had gave me her cell phone number and told me to call her or take the baby to the emergency room if the baby looked anything out of the ordinary. Skin color changes, if she started turning blue, if I saw anything at all. Take her to the emergency room, and here's my cell phone number. Call me immediately as soon as you get there. Well, I went home, took her home, didn't see any skin color changes. She didn't turn blue. I didn't see anything weird. So I just kept breastfeeding and monitoring, making sure she was breathing and that everything looked fine. When the doctor called me that evening to check and see how the baby was doing, very panic-like voice, checked on her. I said the baby was fine because she truly looked fine to me. The very next day in the morning is when she woke up pale, weak. Her body was just, she wouldn't even move kick her little arms and her arms and her legs like she normally would. She was just weak and pale. And that's when the fever started. So that's when I took her to the emergency room. I said, she's got fever, she's pale, she's weak, she's lethargic, something's going on. I need help. She's been overdosed. Yes, it had been yesterday, so the day before. And that's when the doctor said, we're looking at the fear of the unknown. Go home, give her Tylenol. She was injected, correction, it wasn't the next day. She was injected Thursday at 4:30, between 4:30, 5 o'clock on Thursday. And then, so Thursday night the doctor called, and then Friday, I didn't take her to the emergency room until Saturday. So it was not 24 hours. It was about 36 hours later. Correction, 36 hours. So when she got the injection on Thursday afternoon, we were the last patients for the day. At that, the last patients for the day. When she could have taken her sweet time and no med error would have ever even happened. But being the last patients of the day, this is what happened. This is our story. That happened Thursday afternoon. I took her to the emergency room Saturday morning. That's when everything happened. She just wasn't the same baby anymore.
So when you got to the hospital, what was the reception from the medical staff that were there, that the intake?
They were more concerned about the way it happened. They wanted to know, how did the doctor give the wrong medication? How did that happen? That's what they wanted to know. How did that happen? I'm not there to give a story about medication administration errors and negligence. I was at the emergency room to get my baby treatment
downstairs
and to get her well. I was not there to educate anybody about negligence.
So, but obviously the intake process, you let them know that she had been accidentally administered the Gardasil in addition to the other vaccines.
Yes.
But did anyone at any point during that initial hospital encounter, did you have people that either denied that it could be a vaccine injury or confirm? In other words, I mean, maybe, and you might have had a mix of both. You may have had like a nurse say, yeah, I think that's what this is, or you may have had complete denial.
They said, we're going to test her for strep and flu. And of course, those were negative. Strep was negative. Flu was negative. There was no strep or flu. I said, what there has been done is there was a medication error. She has been injected with the Gardasil 9 along with her 4-month vaccine. And nothing. That all they told me was about the fear of the unknown. And of course, that's what I was looking at, fear of unknown.
So basically, help me understand what that means, the fear of the that you're freaking out because you don't know what's going to happen, or we don't know what's going to happen. Like, what do they mean by that?
We, as in they and I, everybody, we didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know what was going to happen. Fear of unknown. That's what the doctor said. We are looking at the fear of the unknown. He said, what was he? He was even saying that he was proud of the doctor to at least call poison control and notify the maker of Merck. Yeah. He was giving
So he was proud of her for doing that?
Yep. For notifying poison control and the maker of Merck, and for taking responsibility for her error.
Her so what does that tell you? If he was surprised that she had done that, what does that tell you? That most doctors wouldn't.
Yep.
Wouldn't even admit it. Wouldn't even admit it. Wouldn't call poison control. But did this doctor fill out a VAERS report? Did she fill out because really from that point on, the denial began. So really, basically, it looked like this. Hello, Merck. Yeah, got a little snafu down here at the office. I accidentally gave this 4-month-old baby a dose of Gardasil 9 along with their other 4-month vaccines. Gosh, what do I do? Hey, don't worry about it. It's all good. Just deny it could have anything to do with the vaccine. Anything that happens after this, you just completely dismiss it as if it's nothing. Never, ever, ever write anything to do with the vaccine down on any records whatsoever. You actually shouldn't have done what you've done as far as like admitting, you did something wrong. But like from now on, not another word. Just keep it cool and it'll be okay. And we'll still send you your bonuses. So don't worry about it. It's all good. Something like that went down. I mean, I'm just speculating. And from that point on, the doctor's attitude was nothing could be related to that error, right? So after the first hospital visit, they sent you home?
Yes, and told me to come back in 2 days if the fever continued.
Okay.
It continued. I went back in 2 days. Then the same emergency doctor that was there that instructed me to go back was there. He already knew that the fever continued and that he told us to come back. He then calls the pediatric nurse who is on the pediatric floor, and she comes down and assesses the baby. She says she sees my daughter, and of course tells me that the baby has fever because of the vaccines that she was supposed to get and the vaccines she wasn't supposed to get. Just give her Tylenol, go back home. I said, well, what about the way she looks? What about the pallor, the lethargy, her not feeling right, her weakness? Well, Mom, when you don't feel good, when you have fever? I said, yes. Well, that's how your baby feels. She just doesn't feel good. That's what's going on. I said, okay. She's trying to explain that she has she's a nurse practitioner in the pediatric field. And, you can get fever for up to 2 weeks, and this is why she has fever. This is what's going on. Give her Tylenol and go home. No big deal to her. It wasn't her baby.
So after the first couple of visits to the emergency room, did her health start to improve, or was she having some developmental delays?
I tried to psych myself that everything was going to be fine. This was nothing was going to happen to my baby. And these doctors must be right. They know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. This is not going to take effect on my daughter. This is just going to run its course and everything's going to be fine. This is just trying to think that in my mind that she is going to be okay no matter what. That's not what happened. The fever stopped, but she was still weak in her trunk and lower extremities. And she had an oral aversion to the bottle. She didn't want her bottle anymore. She only wanted the breast. So she was breastfed all the time. I could not work because when I took her to the babysitter, she refused the bottle. So the babysitter would call and say, hey, can you come and feed the baby? Because I can't get a bottle and I won't take it. I cannot get a bottle to the baby. So, and I can only do so much. She's not taking it. So I would have to go breastfeed at the babysitters. And after being called throughout the day, so many times, you can't hold a job like that. So I kept monitoring the baby, breastfeeding, thinking, of course, that she's going to be fine. Slowly but surely, her weight didn't improve, and she actually dropped weight, and she stopped eating her baby foods. And that's when I took her to the doctor, and I told them that something was wrong, and he ignored me and said that the Gardasil vaccine is safe, and that it was society to blame for my what was it? He said it was society to blame for my I don't know, I forgot what word he used, but he blamed society and said that it was the society's fault, that the vaccines are safe and that she was fine.
Society's what is
pale?
What does that even mean? What does that mean?
Society's fault for my concerns.
Oh, so he was actually referring to us, right? The anti-vaxxers?
Yeah.
It's our fault that you were having concerns about your child having all these issues after a vaccine. Like, yes, if we weren't out here yelling and screaming, or if you didn't, it doesn't even make sense.
I didn't even know about VAXXED at the time. I didn't know about this whole movement. I had no clue. I was just focused on the assessment of me being a mother and a nurse, the assessment of my own baby. I was not taking society. I didn't even have time to do research on anything because I had a baby who needed help. And I was with her 24 hours, and I was focused on her. It was not about anybody's opinion or anything. So for him to blame somebody else and say it's society's fault because you're concerned, but that's not true. I have a baby here, and I'm a mother, and it's my concern because she's not well.
Right.
the assessment of even my nursing background, she was not well.
And you weren't just some, you know, parent that was sitting at home with the internet and like listening to Jenny McCarthy, or you didn't even know about Andrew Wakefield, right? I mean, did you know who Andrew Wakefield was when all this happened? Other than maybe when you had to do an assessment in school and they were telling you to go research whether or not vaccines cause autism, and the first thing you pull up is discredited doctor in England is debunked.
That's when I first heard about Andy Wakefield, and after that, that was left in 2011.
Wait, time out. Okay, so let's get this straight. So you went to nursing school, and they asked you to research whether or not vaccines cause autism, and so you did. And you found that there was a doctor in England who had, you know, maybe drawn some conclusions, pointed some fingers, and that he had been dragged through the mud in the courts out there, stripped of his license, and all these studies said no vaccines don't cause autism, and that was pretty much it. You closed the book on that and set it aside. So it wasn't like when all of this happened, all of a sudden you went, Andrew Wakefield told me vaccines are dangerous.
I didn't.
Because you had bought their version of the story. You'd already bought that version of the story. You were a good little part of the, you know, medical community. You were in the health field. If anyone would have been a root to pro-vaxxer, it would have been you because of your education. So for them to turn around and say, oh, well, it's society's fault, as if you're so wishy-washy that after all that education, all it took was just hearing from Jenny McCarthy and a few other anti-vaccine parents would have made you go, oh, it's the vaccine. I mean, parents know their children. To dismiss that, you stood there and watched them give her a vaccine she was not supposed to get. She was already there. She was already there getting her vaccine. So she would have been completely compliant. You would have been completely compliant. You even were giving your son what was a recommended vaccine, not a mandated vaccine. That's Gardasil vaccine is not mandated for school. They're just recommending it. So you were compliant. You were being fully compliant. So what went wrong in this picture? Was it somebody that you heard on TV? Well, no, that's not possible because they never let us talk. They never tell our side. We never get to get media coverage. I mean, there's been a few like blips here and there on like Oprah and the doctors, and boy, was that a mistake. Oh my God, you know, because JB and Jenny really made Dr. Travis, I think he got ruffled a bit. And so we don't get to tell our side. You know, we really don't. So it's not like you went like turned on your TV and there was some crazy anti-vaxxer that put the idea in your brain. If you were sitting there watching TV, what you would have heard is, Mom, did you know there was a vaccine that could have saved me from cancer? I mean, that's what you're seeing, right? So society, what is meant by that? It's ridiculous. It's as if as soon as your child had a vaccine injury, something magically occurred that changed not your child's brain being damaged by the vaccine. Instead, it affected your brain, and now you suddenly can't think. And all your education and all of your intelligence and all of your ability to look at the situation and figure out what's going on, which, by the way, we're expected to do in every other situation. Your kid's throwing up. What did he eat? You know? Oh, he's got a runny nose. He must have picked up a bug at school. Or, you know, those are like we're allowed to do that in any other place. But when it comes to vaccines, we're not allowed to question, observe, and draw our own conclusions. We are suddenly, you've just been taken from being an educated, compliant, good little girl, nurse, to suddenly being this like airhead that just went out and sought an excuse.
Yeah,
for what was going on with your daughter.
I'm a victim of false allegations for mental instability.
Okay, so
being an RN, and now I have a false allegation of, you know.
Yeah, let's get to that.
These fabricated, oh, she's mentally unfit. She's mentally unstable. You know, there's no way in the world that the medication error could have done anything to this 4-month-old baby. It must have been the mother doing some harm to that poor baby. It just must have been. So we're going to take this child away from her because obviously she's doing something. It wasn't the vaccine. That's where medical kidnapping comes in.
Yeah, so I really want to hear, tell me how this progressed. She was not doing well after the vaccine, and so like a good mother, you were searching for an answer for what is going on with my daughter. And so you were taking her to the doctor, seeking answers, and let's talk a little bit about the journey through them kind of dismissing you to suddenly finding there is something wrong. Talk about that.
I took her to the first doctor after the negligent doctor gave her the Gardasil. I found a pediatrician, brand new. I decided to take her elsewhere. So her first visit was with them. Well, one of those doctors were out of town, so they had a retired physician fill in for them. So we saw the retired physician. I told her what had happened. She dismissed it very quickly and said that
$2.01. I have $2.01.
I'm sorry. She said, what did she say?
Well, you were telling me earlier that they had been running labs and the labs were all coming back negative.
Well, before that, nobody ran any labs at all. She had an overdose, go to the emergency room 2 times, and nobody runs a lab at all. No labs were ever done until February 17th or 16th. February 16th. This happened December 26th. So December, January, you're talking nearly 2 months later before a doctor finally orders labs. And this is after I take her to this new clinic. They didn't run labs. That retired physician did it. And then when we went back for another checkup, they said no, they weren't going to. That's when they blamed society for my concerns. Which was normal. So then I told them I was going to make a self-referral to a neurologist, thinking maybe a neurologist could help because none of these pediatricians are listening to me. So I took her to a neurologist, and the neurologist diagnosed her with floppy baby syndrome, which is hypotonia and delayed developmental delay and seizures because she had staring spells and she would do this mouth moving things that she would do. And I would tell the doctor, look, do you see that? That's what she does. And the doctor would just look at me like that it was nothing. Like I was just crazy. When she ordered the labs, that's when her sodium came back very low. She called me the next day that she needed to be put immediately into the hospital. That same doctor, the new doctor that we were going to, called and said, bring her to my office. I said, for what? The doctor out of town already called and said she needs to go to the hospital, not to your office. Why do you want us at your office? My baby needs to be hospitalized. That's when I knew what is going on. And so I was very upset that a doctor would ask me to go to their clinic to discuss very dangerous lab levels when that could wait, and he should have admitted his patient first and discussed the lab levels after a medical intervention, after treatment, not beforehand. We don't have time for that. You get your patient in the hospital and take care of them first, then you go and tell them what's going on. So I was very upset. That's the same doctor that told me it was society. And so after being admitted for a week at the hospital and coming out with a nasogastric tube, we go for a week hospital follow-up, and that's the doctor that went back into my baby's chart and diagnosed her with anorexia at 6 months old, but no medical intervention, no medical treatment. Diagnoses her at 6 months old with anorexia and allows her to go home and back into society with no care in the world. I don't understand that at all. After knowing that she had a toxic overdose of drugs, you diagnose her with anorexia, no labs, no hospital stay, no CPS, nothing. You just send her home with anorexia at 6 months old. So he went back into the chart. This was 20 days later. At 5:53,
going on a vacation.
and my baby gets anorexia. 2 doctor visits later. But the insurance that she has, legally, you have to turn in 24 hours to complete the chart, not 20 days later. So what happened? Why is he the doctor that gets 20 days to complete a patient's chart, and everybody else in the nursing field and the medical field has to complete these charts in a 24-hour time period? You close it, you get out of there. If you go back in there, it needs to be documented that you're documenting back in there the time and date and why you're in there. And we record that as a late entry. That's what real professionals do. Real honest medical professionals do. When we forget something, we go back in and we put late entry and we document it. We don't cover things up, go back in, secretly document anorexia, and then go back out, because we know that we should have addressed something, but we kept blaming society. It wasn't the assessment on a mother and an RN. It was society was the problem. So he has to cover his ass some form of way. He uses his, he uses my daughter's chart. He goes back in there 20 days later and tweaks it. And that's okay with the CDC. That's okay with Child Protective Services. That's okay. And the facility that reported me for their fabricated story, they didn't contact me when my daughter had a low sodium. They didn't contact me for 9 days. 9 days. But I've done something. Well, what about what they've done? They didn't contact for 9 days.
So,
and not only that, they reported to Child Protective Services that there was 0 feeding difficulties. 0. That she didn't have any feeding difficulties ever. But then that's the same facility that prescribed the nasogastric tube, the little tube that goes into your nose, around your ear, and straight into your stomach. And she's getting feedings every 3 hours through this tube. But she never had any feeding difficulties. Not one. She had 0. But I'm the unstable one. No. If she never had any feeding difficulties, then why did the doctor send her home with a nasogastric tube? Doesn't take a medical professional to know the answer to that one. She had problems. She had difficulties. But somehow that's all my fault. That's all my doing. All of these things, it wasn't a toxic overdose reaction. It must have been Mom. She must want to get rich on some financial gain, which there's no financial gain for any of my children being at risk for anything. So I don't understand that concept. I don't.
So let's go to the hospital visit where CPS got involved. Explain what happened when you returned back and
Oh, first of all, anyone who's listening out there, do not talk to them. They're kidnappers. They lie, and they're so corrupted. They twist your words around. If I would have known about how bad they were, I would have called an attorney, which I recommend everyone to do. Do not answer your door. Do not do the interview. I did the interview with them thinking, like everyone else, that they're there to save kids and that if you're such a good parent, you've done nothing wrong, there's nothing to hide. You don't fear them. You just talk to them. It's no big deal. Nope. They were taking the doctor's opinions and fabricated story and running with it and listening to the fact that the HPV vaccine had zero effect on a newborn, and a newborn would have zero side effects from a medication overdose, and took the baby and left her by herself for 2 weeks, kicked me out the hospital, and left my daughter alone for 2 whole weeks at a negligent facility with monsters, white coat criminal monsters. No grandma, no babysitter, no aunt, no uncle, no cousin, no family member, no aunt, no uncle. Nobody was allowed to be at the bedside with my baby. Nobody. They wanted her alone by herself. And so that's where she was. Of course, those 2 weeks in the medical records prove that she was not doing well. But here we are, nearly, how many months later has it been? Since May of 2016. And here I am fighting for her every day and every night, advocating about medical kidnapping and vaccine information, ingredients. Be informed. Know what you're doing. If you're going to do it, define the ingredients. Make an informed decision. If you want to play Russian roulette, just make sure that you know what you're doing. Because beforehand, I can honestly say I did not know. Now that every parent that does know, and something, if it does happen, I'm sorry, but they cannot say that they didn't know. They're going to be able to say that, God, I should have listened to those people. They knew what they were talking about, but I didn't think it would happen to me. No, I was educated and informed. Total opposite. Everybody lied to me and said these things are safe and effective, and this is what you do, and this is how you do it. It's the biggest lie in history since 1796. But I know that today. I know that now. I know that Dr. Andrew Wakefield is a hero. He's not a liar and a fraud like they painted him to be.
Hold on one second. Babe, can you turn that TV off and can you take him to the treehouse or something? Cause
I'm cooking dinner. I'm almost done with it right now.
Not so much noise. Too much noise. I'm getting complaints about noise. Okay, so I just wanted to take a minute because I'm seeing some comments coming in that there's some background noise, and that is true because just like most of us with vaccine injured children, we've got kids around us. We're moms. So there are children. Is it just one child or is it 2 over where you're at, Anita?
Just one right now.
Just one right now. So you've got one on Anita's side, and we've got one on my side here, and we're doing our best to try and bring you this story without it being too noisy in the background. I'm doing the best I can. I'm using this microphone because I'm hoping it will give less feedback and you'll be able to hear my voice. But if that's not good sound coming from me, then you can let me know, and I will disconnect it. In the meantime, I think everyone can hear and see you pretty well. I've been featuring your lovely face here. But it's getting close to dinner time. We were trying to do this at 3 o'clock, and then it got moved to 4 o'clock, and then it got moved to 5 o'clock. Yes. But we're here, and that's the important thing. So we're going to continue. So we're going to back up a minute, and I'm just going to ask you to go back to when CPS came in and got involved, and they you had a court case and all this other stuff, but you were accused of something pretty serious called Munchausen by proxy, which is basically medical abuse. And the accusation that's leveled when you accuse someone of Munchausen by proxy is that you're, as a parent or caregiver, you are intentionally creating illness or causing illness in your child in order to get attention.
Yeah.
That's the accusation. And I don't know, I'm not going to make any speculations about the legitimacy of the so-called disorder, or whatever you want to call it, this Munchausen by proxy. I will say this, though. I was just watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit the Wednesday night, and they had a story about Munchausen by proxy. And I was watching it, and I was like, yep, this is what they're doing. They're trying to create this public consciousness of this idea that a parent would actually intentionally sicken their child for attention, intentionally make their child ill for attention. I don't buy it. I think it's BS. I think it's pretty clear in your case that it's BS, that the last thing that you would have been doing is trying to make your beautiful baby girl sick. And so let's talk about some of the accusations, though, because, I mean, they weren't just coming out of left field with this. They actually were pointing to specific things that they were accusing you of doing that was making your child sick. So what was their explanation for why her sodium was so low, why she was having difficulty feeding, and why she was not thriving, failure to thrive? What was their explanation?
They said I must be giving her a bunch of water so I could get attention and for financial gain. Totally false. Totally.
But where's the money given out to parents who starve their children into sickness?
I don't know.
Can you point me to where I can go collect some of that?
I have no idea, because there's no amount of money in the world that could get me to harm any of my children or anybody's child. That is not why I went into nursing. That is not why I became a mother. That is not why that's not why I live, to hurt people. I went into the field of nursing to help people. So that is the bogus, like, that is total opposite of me as a person. It's these type of people that do have that unfortunate, real medical diagnosis, and they are sadly sick in their head and in their mind. Other people in their neighbors, their friends, their community, they pick up on that. They notice these things. You don't just you can't just, these people aren't walking around fooling everybody. People know. These people, they doctor shop. They make their kids sick and act like their kid's not doing well or is never going to do well. That's total opposite of me. When that happened to my baby, and that hospital told me that I was in fear of the unknown, but go home and give her Tylenol and come back before there was anything that changed. If I had that, then how come I didn't go to doctor shop, emergency room shop? Why did I only go to that one emergency room? We have two where I live, and we have more on the outskirts of town. So there's plenty of emergency rooms I could have hit up that weekend. I only went to one emergency room. So where is the mental instability? Doesn't make sense.
I wouldn't even.
Why do I have my 14-year-old and my 9-year-old who have never been harmed, never been hurt, never had a medication error of toxic chemicals, And why hasn't the district attorney, who's not a politician, he's a prosecutor, Stephen Tyler of Victoria, Texas, why hasn't he prosecuted me to the full extent? Because that's the name he goes by, that he's not a politician. He's a prosecutor. So he would not put up with something like this in the community. So where's the prosecution? But they still have my baby? Doesn't make sense. I'm not buying it.
So it's starting to get to the point where my son, I think, is too loud in the background, and there's really not. I can't control that, you guys. I sent him off with his dad for an hour and a half, but we weren't able to get on during that time. So he's hungry, he's cranky, he has autism, and that is the way it is. Probably next time we do this, I will have my guest wear a microphone. You guys can hear me, right? You guys can hear me? My voice is coming through nice and clear?
Oh,
yes?
Maybe
I'm having a few comments, people saying that the background noise is louder than you. So, I mean, if you can maybe project your voice a little bit, maybe get a little tighter in on that camera. But we should wrap this up because it is drawing out. But let's just let people know where you're at right now. They currently have your child. You went to court and you ended up agreeing to going through some requirements that the court had set. You went through those. It still wasn't good enough. Talk about that, and let's talk about where you are right now, because you need help. We really want to get your story out there, because public outcry, the court of public opinion and public outcry can be very valuable in cases like this. So we really want to get your story out there. So where is everything at right now, legally? Where do you stand?
Right
what happened
now,
in court?
We're still in litigation. The very first attorney lied to me and told me that the only way to get my child back was to follow along and sign a paper, and basically lied and committed legal malpractice and had me sign a contract under duress, which I've cried to the judge about and said I was misinformed. This attorney did not tell me the steps and the procedure and the options of what to do. And he still allowed this to go on. I got a public defender for that who committed legal misconduct. She didn't do anything either to get my child home. So lo and behold, I am still in litigation. I am trying to get my daughter back home. It now comes down to having expert witness testimony, but now the public defender says that the testimony can only be in the community or in the state of Texas. If I find anybody in New York or California or Illinois or Chicago or Detroit or even Georgia, that they're so foreign that it looks like I'm going across the world to find experts just to say what I want them to say. So it's a bunch of corruption that I'm dealing with. And I don't think it's right, because even here in the state of Texas, I need experts. I need expert testimony, and I'm looking for them. I'm hoping for Austin or Dallas, Texas. Maybe find somebody over there, but I need help. My baby needs to come home. This is just a travesty down here, and nobody should be going through it. And that's why I'm speaking out, because it's not right.
So if people want to reach out and give you support of any kind, if somebody knows, by the way, I think I found the mute button. So I don't know if did the sound get better there for a second? And if so,
I think you're louder. Yeah.
I am loud. I'm just loud. I don't need it. I could actually take the microphone away from I could go like this and I would still, but I wouldn't be able to hear you. See, and the thing of it is the reason why I had put the microphone in is because in order for me to hear you, I would have to have you coming through the speakers. And if you're coming through the speakers, then my microphone from my camera is going to give feedback. So it would actually be worse sound quality than what we're having. But I found the mute button. So when you're speaking, I'm going to mute. But what I'd like to do right now is there's going to be a lot of people watching this, and I'm sure that there's going to be people who want to give you support and help.